Okay, we are now recording. I see Kevin signing in here.
Okay.
Kevin, let me know when you're fully connected if you can hear me. Can you hear us, Kevin? I don't know, his connecting to audio came down. I don't know if you can hear us. All right, well, Margaret, if you want to call
Yes,
the meeting to order.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our April 22nd meeting of the Police Advisory Board. I'm going to do a roll call present. Let's see, we've got Ms. Robinson,
Present.
Ms. Lunemaker. I still haven't gotten that right yet. How about Eunice?
I don't see her signed in yet.
Okay. Dr. King,
Present.
Kevin.
Just made it.
Great. Okay. Okay. Next, all right. Looks like that's everybody.
For the record, we'll just point out Sarah had a work conflict and told me she couldn't make it. Same with Mr. Roberts, and Ryan had a medical reason why he couldn't be here. So for the record.
Okay. Okay, we're going to move to the approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approval of the agenda?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. We need approval of the previous meeting minutes. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second?
A second.
Thank you.
So just for the record, we didn't have printed minutes for this meeting from the last meeting, but we do have the link to the video. So I think the video is most reflective of everything that was said.
I was going to mention I never saw any minutes, but
Yeah.
but I
hard to amend what's already on video, but okay.
We're next moving to citizens' comments. Are there any citizens on the Zoom call with us?
I do not see any citizens on the Zoom call.
Okay, we'll move to number 6, department status. That would be you, Chief.
Thank you very much. Today we held interviews for the administrative assistant position, in which Chair Thompson helped us out with. Thank you very much for your time today. We had some very talented and qualified candidates that we interviewed. There was 5 in all. We are now doing their backgrounds, making sure that they don't have anything in their background that's concerning. And I will make my decision as to who I'm going to extend a job offer to here shortly. Yesterday, we had the written exam for our sergeant candidates. We have 3 sergeant candidates that have put in. I did something a little bit different when they applied. I had them not only put basically a little resume together, but I asked them to get at least 3 recommendations from members of the community recommending them to be promoted to the rank of sergeant. And that could have been anybody that they dealt with here in the community or somebody that they work closely with. And this is all to reinforce my philosophies and beliefs that we're truly going to be a community policing department. So that we're working with members of our community, and our members in the community are part of our department. Tomorrow we have a promotional assessment center that we're putting on. We've contracted with Dr. Mark Foster, who's from the University of Georgia. He has a company on the side where he does promotional assessments for law enforcement, and he goes all over the country doing them. And the assessors that we've picked all come from the Greenville area, as far as the Greenville area, and they're people who have not had any contact with any of our candidates. So it's truly going to be a, the word is eluding me, but we're having people that are doing the assessment and the grading that have nothing to do with any of the candidates. So there's no any subjectivity that can come into play from prior engagements, et cetera, et cetera. So that will be going on tomorrow, and we will take their written exam scores and the scores they get from the assessment center, combine them together, come up with a ranked list, and we'll do our promotions from there. Other than that, we are still, along with the city, working on finalizing the budget. I've submitted all of my requests. I'm working with Andy and getting those fulfilled. Some of the things that we have asked for, the primary thing was tasers. It looks like that's going forward. Of course, the council still needs to rule on it. The other thing that we're doing is we're changing out our body-worn cameras to the body-worn cameras that will integrate with the tasers, so that if the taser is activated, it will send out a signal that will have all of the tasers within a 30-foot radius start recording if they're not already recording, so that we can capture incidents that may not normally get captured because of the dynamics of what's going on. I've also asked for a lot of money for training for our young agency and getting folks trained, bringing in procedural justice training and other community policing type training that the department hasn't had before. And there's various sources that can come in and help us with that. Along the lines of training, I met with Dr. Alicia Watt, who is a professor for Greenville Tech. She has developed a training for police officers that is talks about creating an inclusive, diverse, equitable, and an amicable society. I met with her today. She rolled out her training to me. Currently, it's going through the copyright process, and I'll be meeting with her and Councilwoman Alicia Smith to talk about rolling this training out for not only our agency, but agencies in our area, in our county. I've mentioned before that I've participated in a countywide discussion or forum regarding community policing and training. And hopefully we can roll this out in the same, under the same light and in the same venue. The uniqueness about Alicia's training is she's bringing in concepts and ideas from all of the other concepts that are coming out there. So you have implicit bias, you have procedural justice, you have a lot of these other trainings, and she's bringing all of these together into one training. It's like a one-day training. So I'm excited about that and moving forward with that. So that's pretty much where we are. Our building is still being built behind us. We're dealing daily with little nuances, like we had no bathrooms today because they had to shut the water off. We've been dealing without air conditioning for a little while, but I'm told it should be connected today or tomorrow. So, all those little nuances going on and moving us around has been a little challenging, but we're moving right along. Any questions about that or anything else?
Just one.
What's that?
When you said the tasers, you said a 30-foot radius. Is that normal? And do a lot of other departments use that?
So when I say 30-foot radius, Axon is the manufacturer, and that is the effective range of the signal that goes out.
Doesn't go any farther.
It doesn't go any farther. It's if you can imagine, it's kind of like Bluetooth technology. You get too far away from the device and it cuts off. It's pretty much the same thing. So if you're in an open field, it's 30 feet, but if you're in close quarters or in a house or something like that, and you have walls and stuff that could interfere with the signal, it may be less than 30 feet, but the maximum effective range in an open area is 30 feet.
Chief, when you were saying that before, you said other tasers within 30 feet. not other cameras being activated.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I think that's where he might have
Yeah.
been. a
So
little-
if the taser is activated or turned on, it's other cameras that are within that 30-foot radius will activate the record function.
Are you saying if there are other officers that have body cameras on, they'll be able to pick it up too from a different angle?
Yes. So
Okay, that
the
makes
way the
sense.
body camera, when we get them out, we'll do like a demonstration on how they work. But the way the body cameras are is when you pick it up in the beginning of your shift, it's normally off. When you put it on your uniform, there's a power button that you turn on, but it's not recording for keeps. It turns on a record function that we set the buffer, and usually it's set to like a minute, that starts recording, and it's like a minute loop. So it's recording that minute, but it's overwriting itself at 61 seconds. It's writing over second number 1. And that buffer is always there so that when the officer reaches up and pushes the button for it to start to record, it has a minute's worth of video prior to the officer activating the camera. The uniqueness about Axon is when you pull your taser out and you turn the taser on, not pull the trigger, but turn it on, it sends that signal out. And if the officer hadn't already activated the record, that signal will tell any camera that's on in a 30-foot radius to start recording. So you'll have that 1 minute buffer plus whatever starts recording after that point. Everybody, that makes sense to everybody?
Yeah.
Sir,
Okay. And so Axon makes other devices that emit that signal as well. We just don't have the funding to get them. One is you can put it in the firearm holster of the officer. So when they pull the firearm, it sends a signal out, which would cause the cameras to record. There is a device you can install in the police vehicles so that if you turn your blue lights on, it sends the signal out. If airbags go off, it does it. You can tie it to the rifle rack. So if they push the button to release the locking mechanism for the rifle, then it could send the signal out. So there's a couple other things that we could tie it to, and we'll have that versatility down the road when we have more funding for it.
Okay. If there are no other questions, we'll move on to crime review. Chief?
Margaret, before we move to that, I noticed that there is a attendee in the room.
Oh, okay.
Lowell, I don't know if the attendee wants to speak before the board, or how do we send a chat to them?
No, the attendee, if they want to speak, can raise their hand, and all you'll do is you would hover over them and allow them
And
to
allow them
talk.
to talk? Okay. So
Yeah.
I see a John Sirac that's in the attendees. And John, if you want to talk to the board or pose a question, please raise your hand and we'll give you that ability. Okay, I don't see a hand yet, so let me go ahead and move on to crime review. I'm going to share my screen. Can everybody see my screen?
sir.
Okay. So going over our part 1 crimes, assault and batteries for the month of March, we had 12. We had 5 domestic violence cases.
Wow.
We have 1 simple assault. We made an arrest in 70% of our domestic violence calls that we respond to. 25% of the victims usually accept assistance. The ones that we don't make arrests are usually ones where they decline to prosecute or other issues. In March, we had a record high of 40% of our survivors accepting victim services, which is out of the norm. So Deborah has been very busy. Our assault and battery cases have decreased 300% from February of 2021. And I don't know why Deborah means by DT are open. All right. Our property crimes are malicious damage to personal property. We had 7. 13 larceny cases, 2 motor vehicle thefts, 11 motor vehicle break-ins, and 3 burglaries. Even though we had 11 motor vehicle break-ins, it was a 47% decrease compared to the prior month. And 18% of those involved forced entry to our vehicles. All the rest were unlocked, which we have a continual problem with. Our traffic report for March, we had 17 hit and run reported.
Wow.
We had 9 driving under suspension and 9 DUI cases. Of the tickets issued, the top one was speeding. We had issued 30. 7 was disregard signs or signals. 11 were driver's license violations. We had vehicle license violations 15, and the non-traffic offenses was 25. Total traffic collisions reported was 38. Let me see if I can switch to. Are you all able to see this email? Or are you still seeing the?
Just seen the report.
All right, you're seeing the report. So I gotta. All right, when I'm done, I'll show you. I have or I'll just tell you real quick the breakdown of the non-traffic offenses. 5 were these were all summonses. They weren't physical arrests. So 5 were simple possession of marijuana. 4 were minor in possession. 3 were public disorderly conduct. 1 failure to stop on command. 4 open container. 7 public drunk, and 1 possession of a fake ID. Let's see what So that's the breakdown of the 25 non-traffic offenses. We did make 11 possession of under 21 charges in the month of March, and I think you'll see in next month's report we had much more because there were, as things warmed up, there were more activities in the bars downtown, and then possession of drugs and or paraphernalia charges 5. So these are the overall charges. Earlier, I just mentioned that the non-traffic offenses were smaller for possession of marijuana. What that is some were issued summonses and some were charged in another way. Any questions about the crime and traffic report?
No question.
Seeing none. Stopping the share. Okay. I do see another person that's in the as an attendee. And if there's any attendee that wants to speak before the board or anything like that, please raise your hand so that we can acknowledge you and give you the ability to speak to the board. Okay. Margaret, if it's okay, we'll move right into the next item, which is establishment of neighborhood crime watch groups.
Yes, sir.
So we had that discussion with Sergeant Kelly last week, and we really didn't have a discussion by the board as to what the desire of the board or guidance of the board would be and how we move forward with these neighborhood groups. Traditionally, in the past, it was face-to-face meetings in different neighborhoods. With the COVID restrictions and everything that are going on, it's more difficult to, well, a lot more difficult to do face-to-face. Not impossible, we could still do that. And then there's the ability for people in this type of environment to participate. And I think with everybody's busy lives and everything that are going on, you know, having the versatility of doing stuff like that is something that might be desired. So does anybody have any input on those topics, or is just, you know, have us figure it out and move forward and just report back on how it's working?
Thank you, Chief. I do still have some concerns about how members of the neighborhood watch groups would be trained and how they would have an understanding of what it is that they're, you know, looking out for, what they're supposed to do if they have something that they want to report. I do have, you know, some concerns and reservations about folks thinking that they're seeing something and maybe it's not really something and causing another situation. So just the training element, how that would be handled is something I'd like to hear more about.
Okay. So I think I remember Sergeant Kelly talking about what the national organizations do for training, but I think I know where you're going with this, because there's topics that we discuss in the law enforcement training in procedural justice and other things that get pretty direct and to the point about how people of color are reported in different venues and what activities are being observed, and is it something that really needs police attention, or is it, is it something that's feeding into something a little more nefarious? And so I see what you're saying, and I know if we give any kind of training like that, we need to focus more on the activity of the individual, more so than just the individual. But then there's also an ongoing discussion too of, well, if I see somebody in my neighborhood I've never seen in my neighborhood before, and they're just kind of aimlessly wandering around, that in and of itself, to me, is suspicious, and I'm going to call it in because I don't know why that person is there. Most people today won't confront that person themselves. They'll call us to do it for them. And in some cases around the country, those situations have deteriorated. I would hope that our officers would do a little more inquiring before they try to take any type of official action. But approaching someone and just simply asking, hey, just trying to figure out what's going on. People are calling, they haven't seen you here before, et cetera, et cetera. And if they give the right answer, for the most part, and we can have a debate all day long on what the right answer is, but if it's a legitimate answer or a plausible answer, more than likely the officer's just going to leave them alone and say, okay, have a nice day. But I understand the fear out there of, you're walking through a neighborhood, this is a free country. You can walk in any neighborhood. Unless it's a gated neighborhood, you can go anywhere you want. I mean, I walk my dog all the time. Nobody stops me and asks me who I am. But somebody else might get stopped that way. So yeah, I can understand the need for that type of training and to have that discussion with the neighbors. So that's definitely something that we can address when we start talking to groups about that, because people could be negatively affected by what would seem like an innocuous, simple call. It could be they could feel like they're being harassed because of it, and that wasn't the initial intent. So I see you nodding up and down. I think that's what your concerns are, or where you're going.
Yeah, so I mean, the haven't seen you around here before scenario, there are lots of different reasons why you might be visiting a relative. You might have decided to jog a different, in a different area this day through a different subdivision. You might, have just decided to, take a walk in a different area. Yes, you haven't been seen before, but is that really cause for someone to be called as you're, walking through a new area? So, which obviously we all have a right to do that unless it's, as you said, gated or private. So just, so that people would be aware of, these are things that rise to the level where, yes, you should make a call, or you may feel it necessary to make a call. And these are things where, maybe just even simply innocently asking someone, hey, can I help you? Do you need directions? Just to kind of suss out a situation.
Yeah, it's worthy of a discussion as part of the training, definitely. I know of some folks, you see activity in the neighborhood that in and of itself doesn't look like it's anything nefarious, but it's just out of the ordinary. And then later on, they find out, well, their neighbors got broken into. And what you saw, the moment in time that you saw, the person wasn't doing anything that would cause alarm. But then later down the road, after the fact, you question whether or not you should have called or not. And I think that's the dichotomy of this is, when should you call, when shouldn't you call? And let's have that conversation. Do you want us to go out there and find out who they are? And if we do you know enough about our training about how we approach people on limited information like that? We're trained to not suspect that they're automatically doing something wrong. But when we have an initial contact with you and you can't answer simple questions, or the answers you give me are kind of off the wall, that's naturally going to raise a little bit of suspicion, like, okay, what are we doing here? But if you're really there visiting a relative or something, I go, oh yeah, it's my grandmother's house over there. That's who I'm visiting or whatever. And I go, okay, is your grandma home? Oh, all right, great. No, you'll have a good day, and off we go. I was able to verify you were supposed to be there, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, these are all part of the community discussions that we need to have, and what expectations are, and what people want to do, because we definitely don't want to single people out just because of a certain demographic or something like that, and they're in an area that they've never been seen in before.
Mhm. Yes, thank you.
First of all, this is Eunice. I'm sorry I'm late. I was at the Green Crescent Trails Earth Day event. But related to Neighborhood Watch, I've been on the neighborhood board, CHA, for Camelot off and on for the past 20 years, and haven't heard a request from my neighborhood for creating a neighborhood watch. So I'm just curious, I think it's great you're considering having neighborhood watches. Where are these requests coming for? Do we have neighborhoods that are asking for that, or is it coming from the police force or some other group or volunteers? Who's initiating the request to restart that?
It's solely coming from me, Eunice. I noticed driving around town, there's crime watch signs everywhere, but there's no real crime watch. So I started asking the question. We also, crime watches are also ways to have conversations with the police department, talk more about the police department, what the police department can do, et cetera, et cetera. And then again, that's why I brought it up to the board, is if everybody's okay and we don't need to put these groups together, that's fine too. But without getting out and knocking door to door to door to door on everybody's door and say, hey, this is something that you're wishing you have.
Thank you. That's what I meant. So I would suggest, as a first step, if you want to do that, and I think it's a great initiative to consider, is I know that it's the minority of neighborhoods in Clemson that have an organization like we do in Camelot, but I would suggest starting with organizations that exist. So I know the president of the Camelot Homeowners Association. I would suggest an officer contact them and you speak to those boards. I mean, our neighborhood's getting together on May 2nd, right, in the park, right? That would be an opportunity to ask, is anybody interested here? But we won't reach all neighborhoods that way. But I would suggest, instead of planning either a Zoom or an in-person meeting, you check with the neighborhoods that already have meetings and boards, and first check with the board. The board, obviously, my board doesn't know what everybody in Camelot wants, but we know a little bit about the neighborhood, the history of a crime watch, and so I'm wondering if everybody on the board, perhaps you could raise your hand if you know of a neighborhood that has a board that you could turn that into the chief. Does anybody besides me know of such a thing in one of the neighborhoods? And I
You're
can't.
saying there was a crime watch organization?
If you know of a neighborhood in Clemson that has some kind of a homeowners association or a homeowners group where neighbors get together and talk to neighbors about neighborhood issues, does anyone besides me know of such? So I know of a couple neighborhoods. Anybody else know of a board or a group? Raise your hand if you do. It's just a suggestion of where to start.
No, I agree. And that's one of the places that we would start. But before we started reaching out, we were proposing that to the board because they're, like I said, usually the newer developments are the ones that have the homeowners associations, the older ones don't. And so that's where a crime watch may be more appropriate than not. But
Right.
Go ahead, Dr. King.
I would think that it would be important to make the homeowners associations aware of the cityprotect.com. So, maybe they could designate a member of the homeowners board who looks weekly or so at City Protect to kind of have an idea of what's going on in the city and and communities close to them. Do you think that would be helpful?
We could certainly try, and then just give them a point person here at the department to contact if there's any issues that they want to talk about or address. But, to kind of hit on what Ms. Robinson said, we need to have more opportunities to have ongoing discussions about what the expectations of how we handle things are with the community, and to openly discuss those things. Because right now, those discussions are one way and they're coming from the news, and they're all filtered by the news. And all the rest of that information is not being passed along. So there's a variety of ways we can do it. One of the things we can do as well is bring back what they used to call the Citizens Academy, where we have citizens that sign up and they go through an academy and they learn all the different aspects of the department and what our training is and that kind of stuff, and to give them a little more of a informational base of their police department and our philosophies and how we go about doing business, what our policies say, et cetera, et cetera. It's a deeper dive into the department. So when these issues come out nationally or whatnot, and people start questioning, well, this is happening in this community in another part of the country, what would happen here if the same set of circumstances occurred? Those kind of conversations are the kind of conversations we need to have. So, Margaret, you had your hand up.
I was just kind of agreeing with what Dr. King said. If we reached out to individual HOAs and get their feel on what they would like to do, then maybe we could get the ball rolling there. Because I do think that I think Crime Watch is essential. And Ms. Robinson, you see something, you say something. Now, what your perspective might be different than what a police officer would look at. What we look at would be a pattern of behavior. Is this out of the norm for that person to be? Not saying they're doing anything wrong, but you still should take that caution and be able to check that individual out if it's out of the norm. And that's what you call a pattern of behavior. And if it's not in the pattern of behavior, then it's just like people know their own neighborhoods and know their own neighbors and stuff like that. But what you may look at as something, as a former police officer, I may look at it differently. And it's not meaning that either way is wrong or right. It's just the thinking of what goes in a police officer's mind.
Well, and I totally agree with that. But I also recognize that we get calls about things that are allegedly suspicious all the time, and we approach people, and those people that we approach either have been approached multiple times in the past or are tired of getting the police called on them all the time when they're doing something perfectly legal. And after a while, tempers flare and they may say something or do something because they're tired of it. And then hopefully our officer doesn't take offense to it and recognizes that may be the case, but there are circumstances around the country and maybe even here locally that I'm not specifically aware of where that escalates and then something unfortunate or even inappropriate occurs, and that person is then negatively affected only because they were walking through a neighborhood they don't normally walk through. And I think that's where Ms. Robinson's coming from. And so that's why I say we need to have these discussions. We need to know what the expectations are. Our officers need to have training. Like I said earlier, I have a lot of young officers. I got to train them. I got to let them know, hey, I had an officer do something the other day to communicate with somebody, but because of his youthfulness and how his generation communicates, it wasn't necessarily the appropriate way to communicate with the person. His intent was there, it was good, but the way he went about doing it wasn't, so we had to correct that. So it's those kind of things that unfortunately may lead to something more serious, and that's why we need to constantly have this conversation. So anyway. All right, well, we'll move forward with that. If anybody knows of any homeowners groups or anything like that, please let me know. We'll reach out to them and we'll start there. But if you have any community groups, church groups or anything like that, that we can go and have a discussion about the police that you can recommend to us, please do. And we'll seek them out as well.
Okay, got an update on open carry?
Yeah, I'm going to share my screen. I put a link in the agenda for all of you to take a look at, and that's what I'm going to share my screen on. I had heard a rumor that when the bill went to the other house, it got changed, and one of the changes was you no longer needed to have a concealed carry permit in order to openly carry. Well, what I found on this, and it could still change, and I just didn't find it. Let me pull it up here. That you still have to have a concealed carry permit in order to openly carry, but there are some changes that they made to the bill that I wanted to point out. The good thing is they made some mandatory requirements here under the training. When you receive the training, before you can openly carry, you have to be trained on these issues here on how to secure the firearm in a holster. I'd like to know what the cocked and locked carrying of a firearm is. I know what it means, but I'm curious as to what the training would be. How to respond to a person who attempts to take your firearm from your holster. So that's weapon protection and de-escalation techniques and strategies, which is interesting. That they're going. I'm curious how the firearms instructors that do the current training for concealed carry is going to instruct this. I haven't seen the lesson plan on that. But the one thing at the bottom that caused me a little bit of concern is it looks like they're changing this section here that takes a little bit of the authority away from local municipalities and governments. And it's, as you can see, the line through there, it takes the authority away from county municipalities to regulate the brandishment of firearms. And then what is put in its placement is basically stating that the only time and I'm no attorney, but this is how I interpret it, no local municipality can basically restrict the open carry of a firearm on public property unless there's a special event permit issued or the like. So that may limit the municipalities from prohibiting the open carry of a firearm, say in a park or some other public area. So again, this hasn't been passed yet, but I just wanted to bring it to your attention that this is in there. And if there's no specific language in there giving the municipality or the county the authority to regulate open carry in a public area, such as a park or other public right-of-way, that may tie the hands of the city from prohibiting open carry in those locations. So that was the only update that I had there.
Y'all have any questions on it?
All right. There's one citizen still there, but no hands raised. I think we're to open discussion.
What's on y'all's mind?
I guess I can say I've had a couple individuals that have asked me what's being done about traffic by the Chick-fil-A, and I don't have any answer to that. I just know that it seems to be getting worse than better. But so they say, "Are you going to talk about it?" And I said, "Well, I'll bring it up."
So, we've had this discussion already with the engineer. That is regulated by the state. Our hands are tied. I will say that shortly after Clemson University lets out, both McDonald's and Chick-fil-A are going under construction. McDonald's is doing a complete renovation. Oh, and Zaxby's, all three of them are going under renovation. The plans I saw for Chick-fil-A, they want to put double drive-through lanes in instead of just the single. and then Zaxby's is redoing their property as well. So how that's going to affect the traffic on 123, I can only suspect it's going to be as bad as it is now or worse after all that construction is done. Because the more attractive those businesses are, the more the traffic is going to back up. At the same time, the businesses on the other side of 123 are causing the same issue.
Yep.
And if we eliminated those businesses though, and I don't know if anybody's traveled through there and noticed, it's still going to be a traffic issue because of the volume of traffic that's going through Clemson.
Mhm.
Doesn't really have much to do with the volume of traffic going into those businesses, traffic going through Clemson. And it's 133 is where everything backs up. So the only other thing that I can say, I mean, is just to continually have an open dialogue with DOT. You know, the DOT office that controls all that is in Greenville. And unfortunately, I think some of it is out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah.
I did have contact with Chris Shiver, the engineer, to follow up on the signage, pedestrian signage at College Avenue and 123. And he basically said they had not responded to his inquiry about changing signage for pedestrian crossing.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm learning as I go. We can make the requests all day long, but they have the ultimate power as to what is actually going to happen. One of the things I posted on our Facebook page today about some changes we're doing on Berkeley Drive, and that spurred a whole bunch of comments about different things. One of the things that we're doing, and I'll mention that real quick, is Berkeley Drive historically, we've gotten complaints about speeders on that road. It's a road that's used as a cut through to get from Berkeley over to 93. It also comes right out in front of Clemson Elementary School. That road was 25 miles per hour, but all the surrounding roads around that was 15. And they were also asking for speed humps, which is, I'm not a big fan of speed humps. There's a long discussion about that. But I took a look at that road. I took a look at the speed limits, and in order to get that road consistent with the other roads around it, we decided to drop it to 15. But we're also going to install stop signs at Karen Court and Karen Drive, which is about halfway down, and make it a three-way stop. So if anyone going down the road will have to stop halfway down before proceeding on, as a way of controlling the speed on that road and that traffic. When we put that out there, I had a bunch of people come up, well, we need a three-way stop at this intersection. We need a three-way stop. Well, folks, we did a speed study. We looked at the speed. We looked at the surrounding before we made that decision. We didn't just haphazardly make that decision. So we'll take a look at those other intersections. I know one of them that was mentioned in the Facebook post is involving a state road, and obviously same thing with the state DOT. We got to get their approval before we make a modification to that state road. But we'll take a look at them and see what we can do in those areas.
Anything else? Okay.
I was involved with the Clemson Area African American Museum, and they were talking about the Unity artwork that will go on the police station downtown. They've selected which artwork, and we're in discussion about having an event down there to dedicate it. It's that date will be announced, but I just thought I'd mention that the substation downtown is going to get a Unity piece of art. It's lovely what they've selected, and sometime in the future it'll be painted by a local artist, and there'll be some kind of event. And hopefully that can be that kind of event, Chief, where people can talk to the police and talk about, we hope it to be a unity, have some art, and where kids can do some art too. And maybe the restaurants can participate. And so that might be an event like you're talking about. So I'll be in touch. I'm Mia Tinsley is the chairman of the Friends of Can. So she'll be letting us know. Any questions about that? I don't know if I explained that very well. Sorry.
Did good. Anybody else?
Okay.
I guess that's it, Chief. Till next time.
Okay.
Okay,
right, well,
adjourn.
I do have one thing, Chief.
Go ahead, Lowell. Oh, I'm sorry. I know what you're going to say, Lowell.
Okay.
So starting next month, all council meetings, this meeting included, will be in council chambers. We're still going to have the ability for those who are not comfortable coming in person to do it's going to go back to Google Meet. That will be the platform, so you can participate through Google Meet. But everyone else that's comfortable, we will be at the city council chambers for the May meeting.
So on your calendars, this meeting here, when we created this meeting, was an ongoing recurring event. So I'm going to delete that tomorrow. Just make sure when you look at next month's meeting that it removed it from your calendar too. If not, go ahead and remove them. We will be sending out an ongoing link to you all. Participants, the public won't be able to get on the Google Meet session. They will have to watch it live stream on YouTube and to call in the 653-9886 public comment line to make comments. But the Google Meet will be for commission members and participants of the meeting that are on the agenda.
But the public can come to the meeting in person?
Yes, well, City Hall will be opening. Now it is COVID protocol, social distancing in practice. I think there's a total of, what was it, like 18 to 24 seats in council. And we have a handful for the lobby as well. We have speakers out there as well. I don't foresee it getting packed in, but it's very well distanced in there for individuals that wish to come in.
Good.
And for the listen, for the board members, there are dividers, glass dividers between the seats. So, and we spread them out and CDC.
Dr. King,
If you're away for the meeting, if you're away, you can use the Google Meet to
You
attend.
will be able, yes, there will still allow those that are not comfortable coming in. At some point when this is my understanding, at some point when the emergency ordinance goes away, especially for council, there has to be a quorum at City Hall for these meetings for votes to be official. I'm assuming that's the same for the rest of the commissioned boards of council. So just keep that in mind when we move forward and when we know the emergency ordinances are moving away. Otherwise, the council will have to change our ordinance. So again, that's not a decision of mine. That's something if the powers that be wish to do so, our job and make what happen needs to happen. So
Thank you, Lowell. Any other discussions? Hearing none, I'll move to adjourn. Do I hear a second?
Okay,
Thank you. Have a good month, everybody. Stay well.
thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.